pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The USS Wisconsin is an Iowa-class battleship built for the United States Navy in the 1940s and is currently a museum ship. Completed in 1944, the ship was assigned to the Pacific Theater during World War II, where she participated in the Philippines campaign and the battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. The battleship shelled the Japanese home islands shortly before the end of the war in September 1945. During the Korean War, Wisconsin shelled North Korean targets in support of United Nations and South Korean ground operations, after which she was decommissioned. She was reactivated in 1986 after a modernization program. She participated in Operation Desert Storm in January and February 1991. Wisconsin was last decommissioned in September 1991 after a total of 14 years of active service in the fleet and having earned a total of 6 battle stars for service in World War II and Korea, as well as a Navy Unit Commendation for service during the January and February 1991 Gulf War. Wisconsin was stricken from the Naval Vessel Register the 17th of March 2006 and was donated for permanent use as a museum ship. She currently functions as a museum ship operated by Nauticus in Norfolk, Virginia. On the 15th of April 2010, the city of Norfolk officially took over ownership of the ship. As part of President Ronald Reagan's Navy Secretary John F. Lehman's effort to create a 600-ship Navy, Wisconsin was reactivated the 1st of August 1986. A pre-commissioning unit crew established, and the ship moved under tow to the Avondale Shipyard in New Orleans, Louisiana, to commence pre-recommissioning workups. The battleship was then towed from the Avondale Shipyard and arrived at Ingalls Shipbuilding in Pascagoula, Mississippi on the 2nd of January 1987 to receive weapon system upgrades for her modernization. During the modernization, Wisconsin had all of her remaining 20mm Oerlikon and 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft guns removed due to their ineffectiveness against modern jet fighters and enemy anti-ship missiles. Additionally, the 2 5-inch gun mounts located at midship and in the aft, on the port, and starboard sides of the battleship were removed. Over the next several months, the ship was upgraded with the most advanced weaponry available. Among the new weapon systems installed were 4 Mk-141 quad-cell launchers for 16 RGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles, 8 armored box launcher mounts for 32 BGM-109 Tomahawk missiles, and 4 of the United States Navy's Phalanx close-in weapon system, 20mm Gatling guns, for defense against enemy anti-ship missiles and enemy aircraft. Wisconsin also received 8 RQ-2 Pioneer unmanned aerial vehicles, remotely controlled drones that replaced the helicopters previously used to spot for her 9 16-inch guns. Also included in her modernization were upgrades to radar and fire control systems for her guns and missiles, and improved electronic warfare capabilities. Armed as such, Wisconsin was formally recommissioned on the 22nd of October 1988 in Pascagoula, under the command of Captain Jerry M. Blesh, USN. Assigned to the United States Atlantic Fleet, she was subsequently home-ported at Naval Station Norfolk, Virginia, where she became the centerpiece of her own surface action group, also referred to as a battleship battle group. Wisconsin spent the first part of 1989 conducting training exercises in the Atlantic Ocean and off the coast of Puerto Rico, before returning to the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard for a post-recommissioning shakedown that lasted the rest of the year. In mid-1990, the battleship participated in a fleet exercise. On the 2nd of August 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. In the middle of the month, President George H.W. Bush, in keeping with the Carter Doctrine, sent the first of several 100,000 troops, along with a strong force of naval support, to Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf area to support a multinational force in a standoff with Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. On the 7th of August, Wisconsin and her battle group were ordered to deploy in defense of Kuwait for the Operation Desert Shield, and they arrived in the Persian Gulf on the 23rd of August. On the 15th of January 1991, Operation Desert Storm commenced operations, and Wisconsin found herself serving alongside her sister Missouri, just as she had done in Korea 40 years previously. Both Wisconsin and Missouri launched Tomahawk missile attacks against Iraq. They were among the first ships to fire cruise missiles during the 1991 Gulf War. Wisconsin served as the Tomahawk Land Attack Missile Strike Commander for the Persian Gulf, directing the sequence of launches that marked the opening of Operation Desert Storm, and firing a total of 24 of her own TLAMs during the first 2 days of the campaign. Wisconsin also assumed the responsibility of the local anti-surface warfare coordinator for the Northern Persian Gulf Surface Action Group. Wisconsin, escorted by Nicholas, relieved Missouri on the 6th of February, then answered her first combat call for gunfire support since March 1952. The most recently recommissioned battleship sent 11 shells, 19 miles, to destroy an Iraqi artillery battery in southern Kuwait during a mission called in by USMC OV-10 Bronco aircraft. Using an RQ-2 Pioneer UAV as a spotter in combat for the first time, Wisconsin pounded an Iraqi communications compound on the 7th of February. Her main guns lobbed 24 shells on Iraqi artillery sites, missile facilities, and electronic warfare sites along the coast. That evening, she targeted naval sites with her 16-inch guns, firing 50 rounds, which severely damaged or sank 15 Iraqi boats and destroyed several piers at the Kar al-Matafa marina. In response to calls for fire support from U.S. and coalition forces, Wisconsin's main battery was used again on the 9th of February, blasting bunkers and artillery sites and shelling Iraqi troop positions near Khafji, after the Iraqis were ousted from the city by Saudi and Qatari armor. On the 21st of February, one of Wisconsin's UAVs observed several trucks resupplying an Iraqi command post. In response, Wisconsin trained her 16-inch guns on the complex, leveling or heavily damaging 10 of the buildings. Wisconsin and Missouri alternated positions on the gun line using their 16-inch guns to to destroy enemy targets and soften defenses along the Kuwait coastline for a possible amphibious assault. On the night of the 23rd of February, Missouri and Wisconsin turned their big guns on Kuwait's Failaka Island to support the U.S.-led coalition ground offensive to free Kuwait from the Iraqi occupation forces. The two ships were to conduct a diversionary assault aimed at convincing the Iraqi forces arrayed along the shores of Failaka Island that coalition forces were preparing to launch an amphibious invasion. As part of this attack, Missouri and Wisconsin were directed to shell known Iraqi defensive positions on the island. Shortly after Missouri completed her shelling of Failaka Island, Wisconsin, while still over the horizon, and thus out of visual range of the Iraqi forces, launched her RQ-2 Pioneer unmanned aerial vehicle to spot for her 16-inch guns. As Wisconsin's drone approached Failaka Island, the pilot of the drone was instructed to fly the vehicle low over Iraqi positions so that the soldiers would know that they were once again being targeted by a battleship. Iraqi troops on the ground heard the Pioneer's distinctive buzzing sound, and having witnessed the effects of Missouri's artillery strike on their trench line, the Iraqi troops decided to signal their willingness to surrender by waving makeshift white flags, an action dutifully noted aboard Wisconsin. Amused at this sudden development, the men assigned to the drone's aircrew called Wisconsin's commanding officer, Captain David S. Bill III, and asked, quote, "Sir, they want to surrender. What should I do with them?" End quote. This surrender to Wisconsin's Pioneer has since become one of the most remembered moments of the Gulf War. The incident was also the first ever surrender of enemy troops to an unmanned aircraft controlled by a ship. Wisconsin drone also carried out a number of reconnaissance missions on occupied Kuwait before the coalition's ground offensive. The next day, Wisconsin answered two separate call-fire support missions for coalition forces by suppressing Iraqi troops barricaded in two bunkers. After witnessing the effects of Wisconsin's strike against the Iraqi positions, an elated Saudi Marine commander commented over the radio, quote, "I wish we had a battleship in our Navy," end quote. Both Wisconsin and Missouri delivered more than 1 million pounds of ordnance on Iraqi targets by the time President George H.W. Bush ended hostilities on the 28th of February. With one last salvo from her big guns, Wisconsin fired the last naval gunfire support mission of the war, and thus the final battleship in the world history to see action. Wisconsin remained in the Persian Gulf after the ceasefire took effect and returned home on the 28th of March 1991. During the 8 months Wisconsin spent in the Persian Gulf, she had flown 348 UAV hours, recorded 661 safe helicopter landings, steamed 46,000 NMI, fired 319 16-inch rounds, 881 5-inch rounds, and 5,220 mm phalanx (CIWS) rounds, and launched 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Since all 4 remaining battleships were decommissioned and stricken following the Gulf War, this was the last time that United States battleships actively participated in a war.
But now, yeah, make all the demons quiet, yeah, we were built to thrive, yeah, I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah, make all the demons quiet, yeah, we were built to thrive, yeah, I think that we've all had enough. Oh, yeah, I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. Yeah, I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. They know that we're calling it wrong.